Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Higurashi When They Cry. It's chapter 2 still, but we're getting into chapter 10, part 10 of chapter 2. I'm sure you get it by now, alright? So without further ado, let's get into it. After hanging up on Shion, I searched for Rika-chan's phone number on my school contact list. Oh, and now I'm caught up with what happened during the last episode. Okay. There it is. My fingers trembled with urgency, and I failed multiple times to put in the simple 5-digit number.
圭一、
Mom?
こんな時間に電話？夜遅くは先方に失礼だからよしなさい。
今はそれどころじゃないんだよ。
You sound a little thirsty, relax. I shouted angrily at my mother, listening to the dial tone. Pick up, come on, pick up! Nani? The time was 11 p.m. This is so creepy. It certainly wasn't early. It was essentially the middle of the night. Had Rika-chan already gone to bed? I thought, oh my god. Her phone would be ringing constantly though, so would she get back up for me? Rika-chan didn't pick up. She didn't pick up. She did not pick up! Maybe she just happened to miss it. Maybe her bed was just too far away from the phone. The sound of a phone ringing gets clearer and clearer the longer you go sleeping. Then? The bathroom? Yeah, she must be taking a bath. If that was the case, then even if she had heard the phone, she wouldn't be able to pick up. It was a little late to be taking a bath, but it was possible she normally took baths right before going to bed. I'll wait 30 minutes and then try calling again. Even as I was thinking that, I called her house over and over again. I kept calling, over and over, again and again. I kept on calling her, but she didn't pick up even once. I think I kept trying for about 30 minutes. Yet she wasn't picking up. Were my phone calls so persistent that she had gotten scared of picking up the receiver? No, that couldn't possibly be it. There was no point in doing this any longer. The best thing to do would be to go there in person. Where was Rika-chan's house though? Shit, I've never even asked where she lived. Her residence was written there in the contact list, but it was an address with mostly numbers, so I couldn't tell where it was just by reading it. Isn't there a map or something in here? Rika Furude. Her last name was Furude. It was a bit of an odd last name, so it might be easy to find. Thinking that, I rummaged around the drawer with the phone book. Could only find things like takeout menus and phone numbers for public establishments though. Shit. I tore one thing after another out of the drawer, but I didn't come up with any clues as to where Rika-chan's house was. Calm down, Keiichi Maibara. If you don't know, then just ask. Ask someone who does know. Hey Ma!
レナなら知ってるに違いない。
I looked up Rena's phone number on the contact list. Rena Ryugu. There she was.
Moshi, Ryugu desu.
It was the voice of a grumpy-sounding man. It must have been Rena's father. I am calling in the middle of the night. I need to be polite.
夜分遅くに申し訳ありません。前原と申しますが、レナさんはいらっしゃいますか？
レイナは風呂に入っていますが。レイナ、友達から電話だぞ。
Reina? Alright, Reina Ryugu was a real name, wasn't it? I had gotten so used to calling her Rena that hearing her real name caught me a little off guard.
もしもし、お電話変わりました。
That doesn't sound like her.
あ、俺だよ。刑事だ。夜遅くにすまん。
あれ？圭一くん？
Okay, that sounds like her.
こんな時間に何かな？かな？
Definitely her.
実はリカちゃんの家がどこにあるのか知りたいんだ。
Rena seemed a little appalled that I had called her for something like that at this hour. However, she spoke her next words seriously, as if she had caught on to how urgent my need was.
フルデ神社の境内に集会所があるよね。その裏手に2階建ての倉庫小屋があるのを知ってるかな。そこに住んでるんだよ。
I couldn't immediately visualize the place, but as long as I knew she lived on the shrine grounds, I would just have to take a look
わ
around.
かった。ありがとう。こんな遅くにすまなかったな。親父さんに謝っといてくれ。
そんなのはいいよ、圭一くん。それより、どうしてリカちゃんの家を聞くのかな。
Rena asked in an unusually sharp way, halting me before I could hang up the phone. I hesitated for a moment about whether to tell her or not. He was killed because I told
圭
him.
一くん、聞こえてるなら答えてほしいな。どうしてリカちゃんの家の場所をこんな時間に聞きたいのかな。
Rena affected her usual tone, but beneath her words lay a certain tension, like she had intuitively sensed something was going on. What will you do, Keiichi? Give me the choice. If it's Rena, can't I tell her? He was killed because he found out. I revealed everything, so he was
圭
killed.
一くん、レナは真剣に聞いてるんだけどな。
Rena? Keiichi-kun doesn't give a
答
fuck.
えてほしいよ。
Rena asked me once again in a tone so forceful I couldn't imagine her ever using it normally. Lies! I was taken aback by her vigor. Rena was Rika-chan's friend too. She had the right to be concerned about Rika-chan disappearing. If I told Rena then, even if only for a moment, I could drive away my horrifying fears.
レナ、理由を聞かれると困るんだが。
We can talk about it tomorrow at school. Done. Rena's tone was seriousness itself. Just from that tone, I could feel her saying, no matter what you say, Keiichi-kun, I will believe you. That subtle sense of security gave me the courage to reveal the truth, idiot.
リカちゃんが危ない気がするんだ。
それは虫の知らせかな。それともリカちゃんに危険が迫っている何か確信がある？
Say premonition and keep it moving. I really didn't have time to go back and forth with Rena about this. Still, I think listening to her calm voice soothed my pointless
確
impatience.
信はないけど。
Yet, I still hesitated. I had told Rika-chan that we snuck into the ritual storehouse. The mayor, to whom Shion had confessed before that, had already disappeared. So, it was possible that Rika-chan also... I didn't know how to explain it to Rena. While I was tongue-tied, Rena spoke up.
変なこと聞いてごめんね。考えたら確信なんか必要なかった。
Rena laughed a little, seeming a bit absent-minded. I wasn't exactly in the mood to laugh, so this time I was dumbfounded. Rena continued in a cheerful yet still purposeful voice.
友達のことが心配になって、それを確かめるのに理由なんかいらないと思う。
Aren't you the least bit curious? You don't want to join me in this little adventure, late-night adventure?
仮にリカちゃんが寝てて、それを起こしてしまったとしても、それが理由なら、私たちは誰も怒らないと思うよ。
Rena, thank you.
じゃあ、まずは圭一君に確認するね。
Here she go again.
リカちゃんの家に電話はしたんだよね。それでどうしても繋がらないから、家の場所を聞いてきたんだね。
ああ。10分以上は鳴らし続けたと思う。ひょっとしたら気づかなくて寝てるだけなのかも。
リカちゃんの家はとても狭いの。だから電話が鳴ったら、たとえ寝ていても気づかないわけはないよ。さとこちゃんもいるんだから、2人揃って気づかないわけはない。
Why would Satoko-chan be there as well?
さとこってリカちゃんと一緒に住んでるのか？
うん、知らなかったの？
No idea.
今はその話は後ね。とにかく電話をそれだけ鳴らして誰も出ないのは絶対におかしいよ。
Rena understood that the situation wasn't normal far faster than I could have ever imagined her to. It made her seem dependable. However, the fact that Rena had acknowledged this also meant that the best case possibility of it all just being the result of my own needless fears went out the window. Fam, are you in love with long-ass sentences?
私も今からすぐにリカちゃんの家に行くね。一緒に行く？なら迎えに行くよ。
わかった。じゃあいつもの待ち合わせ場所で合流し、待ってるぞ。
ううん。 私、圭一くんの家に迎えに行くから。
I'm sorry, what?
だからお家で待ってていいよ。それからご家族に、私と一緒にリカちゃんの家に行ってくるって伝えておいてね。
うちでいいのか？時間のロスのような。
あと、みーちゃんには電話した？みーちゃんはこういう時、すっごく頼もしいの。
Yeah, skip
ま
that.
だなら、私から電話しておくね。
My thoughts froze for a moment. Shion had just told me to be careful around Mion during our phone conversation a little while ago. If the Sonozaki main house was somehow lurking behind the surface of the annual freak deaths, then the current heir to the family, Mion, wouldn't be uninvolved. So, wouldn't that mean she wasn't uninvolved in what happened this year to Takano-san and Tomitake-san, and also the mayor's disappearance?
じゃあね、すぐに行くからね。待っててね。
That's all Rena said before hurriedly hanging up. Now wasn't the time to be doubting Mion. I needed to make sure Rika-chan was safe. I got changed and grabbed the key to my bike. I figured things would go smoothly if we met up in the place we usually do before school. She told you, stay where you are, she would come and collect you. Oh my god. My parents would have probably objected if I told them I was leaving, so I creeped out without a word. The night was unusually warm and disagreeably humid. She said that Rika-chan and Satoko lived together, right? Then it wasn't only Rika-chan. Satoko wasn't there either. Realizing what them living together really meant caused my thoughts to immediately take a turn for the worse. That can't be. Satoko is... She's got nothing to do with any of this. Even if there were a reason for Rika-chan to disappear, there shouldn't be one for Satoko.
Keiichi-kun!
I'm sorry, I'm an idiot. Rena was really fucking fast. She approached me on her bike at an amazing speed. Her breath was ragged, painting a clear picture of just how hurriedly she had been going.
おう、レナ、さあ行こうぜ。
圭一くん、私、お家で待っててって言ったはずだよ。
You ain't my boss. Rena's expression was all business. Was she mad? It came out of the blue and I faltered for a moment.
いや、ここで合流した方が早く出発できると思ってさ。
圭一くんは本当に分かってるの？
Rena shouted, clearly angry. I clearly don't fucking get it then. I had never seen Rena like this before. I haven't seen her in chapter 1 then, brother.
分かってるのかって何がだよ。
Rena seemed to notice she was scaring me, so she took a couple of deep breaths and then continued as if admonishing me, but her expression didn't soften at all.
圭一くん、昨日村長さんがいなくなって村中で大騒ぎになったよね。
ああ。
そんな中で圭一くんはリカちゃんとさとこちゃんがいなくなったって言ってるんだよ。
ああ、そういうことになるな。
じゃあもっと用心しなくちゃダメだよ。こんな夜中にたった一人でこんなところで突っ立ってるなんて不用心にも程があるんだから。
I began to understand where Rena's anger was coming from.
ご家族にはちゃんと私とリカちゃんの家に行くって伝えたよね。
I failed your first job. What makes you think I succeeded with the second one?
万が一私と圭一くんが揃って失踪しちゃうようなことがあっても、いつどの辺でいなくなったのかを残すことができる。
Rena was perfectly level-headed in this emergency situation. Ever since the night of Watanagashi, every night, someone had died or disappeared. On the night itself, Takano-san and Tomitake-san met strange ends. On the next night, the elder vanished. Now on the next night after that, Rika-chan and Satoko were nowhere to be found. I hadn't been thinking of anyone but myself, but it wasn't enough to say that Hinamizawa was a little weird at the moment. It was, in fact, extremely strange. Rena had even anticipated our own disappearances and had told me to tell my family where I was going. I was embarrassed at my own carelessness, and the need to be embarrassed made me afraid of the night.
ごめん、まだ行ってなかった。
Wait, why do you mean,
じゃあ一緒に言いに行こう。
With Rena beside me, I wheeled back towards my house. The moon seemed strangely high in the sky. A sky that was uselessly vast and cold. So that no matter what, it would never seem to me like a dream. This cruel fact had already confronted me. On such a crazy night, Rena had been unimaginably dependable. Hinamizawa's metamorphosis, enough to make Rena caution me against carelessness, was to me the most fearsome thing of all. The moon seemed strangely high in the sky. We met up with Mion on the way, and she, of course, was unsure to whether believe me about Rika-chan and Satoko's disappearance.
ケイちゃん、本気で言ってんの？もし冗談だったらかなり怒るよ。
Mion was clearly displeased. If this were a joke, it wasn't very funny. I'm just a concerned friend, dog. What you mean? I understood how indiscreet my words were. Ever since the day before yesterday, someone had either died or vanished every night. Rika-chan and Satoko disappearing after all that was something you couldn't even say, even in jest.
みーちゃん、本当に冗談だったなら怒るんじゃなく笑おうよ。だって冗談なんだから。私たちはそれが冗談であることを確かめなくちゃいけない。
そうだね。機嫌の悪そうなことを言ってごめん。
However indiscreet a joke it may have been, if we learned that our friends were safe, it would end up as nothing more than a funny story. Having been warned about that by Rena, Mion gave a dry smile, the tension she felt loosening a bit. She mounted her bicycle as well. Our 3 bicycles' lights flashed down the pitch-black roads. They were some of the only illumination outside. Before making all of this, I would have called Oishi-san as well. Just in case. Inform him of the situation so that he's caught up on what the status is. In case anything happens to us, he has the full story.
ケイちゃんはなぜ急にこんな時間にリカちゃんの家に電話なんかする気になったわけ？
Let's just call the gut feeling and keep it moving. Mion asked me the same thing that I had trouble explaining to Rena.
虫が知らせた。じゃあ、おかしいか。
I couldn't quite tell because it was dark, but I thought I could see Mion smiling very ambiguously. Fam, if you had asked me that question in this situation, I would have just let you know about, being on edge, like being on nails after Takano-san and Tomitake-san died, with the elder disappearing. You're very uncomfortable. So you just do things, just to be sure. I definitely understood that she wasn't convinced though, despite the darkness.
俺さ、うたた寝してる時に悪い夢を見ると。
ケイチ君はそれでリカちゃんがさらわれる夢を見たわけかな。
いや、もっと漠然とした予感みたいなものだよ。リカちゃんが電話に出てくれたなら、レナやミオにも続けて電話するつもりだったよ。
Another lie. Lies smoothly babbled out of my mouth, makeshift though they were. I was lying because I thought telling them I was connected to Shion would be like silently admitting that we had broken into the ritual storehouse together that night. Stolen into? What? Mion didn't press me any further. I don't know whether that convinced her or not. Or maybe she figured that making sure Rika-chan and Satoko were safe would be faster than making an issue out of it. I felt relieved, and immediately a little guilty. Mion hadn't really been acting any differently these last few days, but I'm still trying to distance myself from her for some reason. It was only because of what I heard from Shion and Oishi-san that she was the successor to some kind of super extravagant gang family. No. Was I just trying to force myself to forget? Don't do that, Keiichi Maibara. Wasn't it Mion who was the first to ask me about the night of Watanagashi? In such a harsh tone at that? Have I already forgotten the terror I felt? At the time, Mion looked like someone different from the Mion I knew. When I think about that Mion, then Shion and Oishi-san's descriptions of Mion made a tiny bit more sense. That's it, isn't it? If it wasn't for how she acted that day, then I wouldn't be feeling this way towards her now. What on earth was going on with her back then? I was conveniently thinking of everything she had done after that, while disregarding the very first thing, the thing I should have been looking at most, wasn't I? Mion was pedaling her bicycle in front of me, her long hair fluttering in the wind. No matter how long I looked at her back, it never gave me any answers to any of my questions. We went all the way to the stone steps leading to the shrine grounds. Of course, we weren't going to want to haul our bikes up there. So we parked them beside the staircase
フルデ
instead.
神社か。
みんな公園みたいな感覚で勝手に出入りしてるけど、本当はここはフルデ家の立派な私有地なんだよ。
So the entire shrine is private property. It really makes you feel the passage of time. 10 or 20 years ago, it would have looked exactly the same.
だとすると、フルデ家って結構な旧家なんじゃないのか？代々続いた由緒ある。
うん、ない。おかしいよ。
Rena said something clearly disquieting, so I ran over to her.
どうしたレナ？
リカちゃんとサトコちゃんはいつもここに自転車を止めてるはずなの。ほら、どこにもない。
I took a look around. Indeed, there were no other bicycles aside from the ones we had taken to get here.
他の場所に止めてる可能性もあるんじゃない？例えば、担いで石段を上がったとか。
女の子には無理だよ、ケイチくん。
Just as she said, I couldn't imagine Rika-chan and Satoko lugging their bikes all the way up there. I can see Satoko doing it, but not Rika-chan. We hadn't yet knocked on Rika-chan's door, but reality was already sparking some ideas that weren't what you would call good. Maybe they were just parked under some trees and we hadn't noticed them. I refused to believe that not being able to find their bikes here was proof that they had
行こう
disappeared.
ぜ。家に行った方がはるかに確実だろう。
We all nodded and dashed up the stone steps. We passed through the red arch and came out onto the shrine grounds, which was covered in neat gravel. It was so quiet here, as though the Watanagashi festival had never happened.
で、リカちゃんたちが住んでいる家ってのはどこにある？
こっち、ついてきて。
Rena took the lead and sprinted off. This is a trap. We went towards the assembly hall behind the shrine and then looped around behind it. In the darkness of the night, we found a small prefab two-story shack that looked like a warehouse.
明かり消えてるね。寝てるんじゃない？
ノックしてみよう。
Rena and Mion neared the shack, which didn't really look like a place people would live in. They had such a beautiful shrine, so I figured they would live in an equally beautiful house. It was far from what I expected.
リカちゃん、サトコちゃん、いる？
Rena shouted up towards the second floor. Her voice was restrained at first, but it steadily grew louder. No answer. In fact, there wasn't any sort of activity in the house at all.
寝てるのかもしれない。起こしてみよう。
Mion banged on the shutter with both hands and the loud sounds echoed into our surroundings. They would have to notice this much noise. They would turn on the lights in the room, fling open the windows, and yell, "What time do you think it is?" That, however, wasn't happening. There was absolutely no response. So you're telling me there's no one else living in this prefab shack aside from those two? Like somebody would have to be living on the first floor as well, right? Mion stopped slamming her fist on the shutter, and a sudden silence fell over us, like some adult or something. The silence aroused terrible thoughts in us. I could feel the blood draining from my face.
鍵かかってる。どこかから中に入れないかな。
Rena showed no signs of stopping. It didn't look like she would admit they weren't there until we went inside and saw for ourselves. That refusal to give in gave me strength.
2階の窓とか鍵をかけ忘れてないかな。俺ちょっと試してみる。
ケイちゃん、はしご。
Mion brought over a ladder that was standing against the house. The footing was a little unstable for me to be climbing it, but Mion held the ladder firmly in place for me. I hadn't climbed too many ladders. My inexperience with them exposed, I climbed up one step at a time and tried to open each window on the second floor.
みーちゃん、 私念のため本宅の方も見てくるね。すぐ戻るから。
Rena darted away. What? A main house?
古出家の本当の家だよ。両親が亡くなって以来ずっと放置してあるそうだけど。
あ、そうか。リカちゃんのご両親って亡くなってるんだよな。
At that point, I recalled something else. Wasn't Satoko... fuck's sake, you dumb motherfucker. I thought you almost recalled her brother.
聡子も親なしだよ。親代様のたたりってことで、両親が崖から落っこちてね。
Huh.
お兄さんだったサトシ君もいなくなっちゃって。
サトシって前に聞いた名前だな。
I remembered. He was the one who disappeared last year because of the curse.
それ以来、聡子はリカちゃんと一緒にこの小屋で暮らしてるんだよ。
Alone?
互いに身寄りのない一人ぼっち同士。助け合ってね。
本宅って言ったか？そっちで暮らした方が楽だろうに。
The curtains were drawn, so I couldn't get a good look inside to see, but two young girls living together seemed like a pretty tough life.
初めはそうしてたみたい。でも、両親を思い出すから辛いって言って。
I had no idea. I feel really bad for them. They were normally so cheerful at school that I never even realized an atom of this.
リカちゃんもサトコも大変なんだな。
呪われてるんだよ。
Come again? Suddenly, Mion said something in such a low voice that it sounded like she was really cursing someone, and I didn't let it slide. I turned on the ladder to face her and asked again.
ミオン、お前、今、なんて言った？
呪われてるって言ったの。
Mion, still holding on to the ladder, brought her head up to look me in the eyes. As soon as our eyes met, an absolute zero jolt of electricity surged through my body. Mion's eyes clouded over, and within them boiled and bubbled, a stew of chaos. They whirled around and around like a raging sea, and bubbles floated to the surface. I had at some point been trapped on this ladder, like being cornered on a dead-end street. Nah, fuck that shit, dog.
ミオン、お前、なんて顔してんだよ。
You can break loose, man. You can break loose. If you really wanted to, you could break loose. I intend to follow that up with, "You're going too far with this joke," and give her a forced smile. However, on such uneven footing as I was, the only thing that came out of my mouth was a hoarse groan as I desperately struggled to not let nausea overwhelm me.
王女聡子はね、親代様のたたりを一身に受けた呪われた子なの。
Damn, tell her how you really feel, fam. Mion answers with a response to something I never asked, as if replying to somebody else's
公
question.
園の展望台から転落死したのは両親だけ。あの子をみそっかす扱いしてた冷たい両親だけが死んで、あの子は一人だけ助かった。引き取り先であの子をいじめたおばは、綿流しの夜に異常者に脳みそがぐっちゃぐちゃに飛び散って頭が原形をとどめないくらいにめった打ちにされて殺された。いつもあの子をかばってたサトシ君もあの子の誕生日に突然消えてしまった。あの子をいじめていなかったのに消されてしまった。警察は家出したんだって決めつけたけど、サトシ君は逃げ出すような人じゃなかった。いつも一生懸命、誰の力も借りずにコツコツと一人懸命に努力する人だった。たった一人の妹のために身を粉にして頑張ってたのに消されてしまった。あの子のためにだけに生きていたのに消されてしまった。かわいそうなサトシ君、なんて報われないサトシ君、なんて恩知らずなあの子なの。あの子に近づけばそれが誰でも末路は同じ。
So why did you invite her to the club then?
たたりで死ぬかたたりで消えるか。あの子に安らぎなんてあるものか、あの子に安らぎなんてあるものか。リカちゃんが消えたのもきっと聡子のせいだよ。違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない
Mion was mumbling words over and over that were no longer coherent. Should I trigger her? Should I say that I have been in cahoots with Shion all this time? Her shoulders were trembling so hard that I could feel it through the ladder. I almost lost my footing, which made me realize just how far away the ground really was.
落ち着けよミオ。何のことを言ってるのかわからないよ。
I wasn't sure if she even heard me. Mion rocked back and forth, and that rocking and trembling was becoming even more violent. Help me! The ladder, it's falling! Just then, I heard the sound of many people running towards us.
おいここだ
I very nearly said help me outright. This bitch is crazy, outright. 4 or 5 adults led by Rena ran over here with flashlights.
ケイチくん、みーちゃん、遅れてごめんね。
Damn, you really saved my life.
鍵、借りてきたよ。
助かったね。
What the fuck you mean, taskattane?
どうも窓も戸締まりは完璧らしくてね。困ってた。
Crazy bitch. When I heard Mion talking like nothing had just happened, I again felt a chill run through me. The person currently holding the ladder in place, it was definitely Mion. It was the real Mion Sonozaki. Then, the person muttering to themselves just a few seconds ago. Who the fuck was that? The person who was mumbling about terrible things like curses. Who was that? I jumped down from the ladder as if running away, kissed the ground, before Mion turned into that person who wasn't Mion a second time. The adults tried a few different keys on a keyring as they tried to open the big shutter on the first floor. Fam, are you trying to make a brother fumble up with these sentences? Like, what the fuck?
リカちゃんの家はね、もともとは町会の防災倉庫だったの。だからシャッターの鍵を今でも村長さんの家が預かってるの。
今ではリカちゃんとサトコの指定だけど、まあもともとリカちゃんの家の敷地内だし、誰も文句は言わないけどね。
Is that correct, by the way? Like, in that sentence, the very beginning of Mion's sentence, she says, it's Rika-chan and Satoko's. But shouldn't it be Rika-chan and Satoko-chan's? Or Rika and Satoko-chan's? Because that's the one closing off the mentions of persons? Or how the fuck does that work? Why is this the case? Mion gave me a smile as she said that. I, however, could only return her gaze with an aghast expression. Mion was acting all too normal now, but that only contrasted all the more sharply with her earlier un-Mion-like creepiness. Bang, bam, clatter, 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 bang! The shutter opened up for the first time in a very long while. Rena located the light switch and wasted no time going inside. I followed her in.
リカちゃん、サトコちゃん、いるなら返事をして。
We climbed a narrow staircase. It had looked like nothing more than a warehouse, but now that I was inside, I could feel how lived in it was. It was a person's home for sure. Somehow, the scent of the two of them filled the place. This was definitely where Rika-chan and Satoko lived. The first floor doubled as a town assembly warehouse, but the second floor was a space entirely for living. Just a one-room apartment. Past the kitchen was a living room taking up about 150 square feet. Dressers, cupboards, and the like were packed into the space, and in the corner there was a huge pile of clothes that appeared to have just been taken in from drying outside. In the center of the living room was a fold-up table, and on it were small containers for things like soy sauce and salad dressing. The sense of a frugal lifestyle drifted from all of it. It was strange that they weren't here in the middle of the night like this. The adults, who were they by the way? Give me names. Climbing the stairs one at a time, began to make a fuss and talk amongst themselves.
どう？やっぱりいない？
いない。
So not a joke.
絶対おかしい。
The village had just been thrown into chaos yesterday because of the mayor's disappearance. And then today, even Rika-chan and Satoko had... Were they out playing somewhere together? That can't be, it's too late for that. Their bicycles aren't here though. Where would they have gone so late at night? Have they just not come back yet? Where did they go? The adults put forth various possibilities, and the house immediately devolved into a state of confusion. Eventually, Mion settled them down.
信じたくないけど、君吉の村長さんが消えたのが昨日の今日。無関係とは言い切れないね。
The adults' faces paled at Mion's declaration. Mai and Rena's did as well. Rena's and mine did as well?
例えば、ご近所に行ってお茶でもごちそうになって眠っちゃって、起こすに起こせなくなってるなんて可能性ももちろんあるよね。
Who the fuck was that? Bill Cosby, bitch?
その可能性をまず潰そう。牧野さんは裏手から沢のあたりの家を回ってください。慶太郎さんはおじゃが池の方。岡村さんは
Okamura. Mion promptly gave directions to the villagers. The adults followed them without hesitation despite her age.
私はここに残って電話で片っ端から心当たりに問い合わせてみます。じゃあ皆さん、そういうことで。
Got it. The adults all roared in reply and pounded back down the stairs below. Pounded.
さすがみーちゃんだね。みーちゃんは学校だけじゃなく、ひなみざわの委員長さんみたいだよね。
茶化さない茶化さない。ほらどいて。おじさんは電話を使うんだから。
Mion grinned proudly, took the receiver, and got started. Rena gave Mion a trusting look, considering her dependable for doing all of this. My feelings, though, were a bit more complicated, since her leadership seemed to be affirming the Sonozaki family successor impression that Shion and Oishi-san had given me. See, again, man, it's fucking weird. You're constructing your sentences weirdly. Stop right there, Keiichi Maibara. None of that matters right now. The most important thing is to make sure Rika-chan and Satoko are safe. Let's see. Couldn't there be a clue hinting at where they might have gone somewhere in this room?
とはいえ、そんなのわかるはずもないよな。
If we tore the whole place apart and figured out what was different from before, we might be able to speculate, but there was nothing strange about this room, and there were no clues in sight. In the first place, I had never been here before. There was no way for me to know what was different if I didn't know how the room usually looked, you know? Don't give up, Keiichi Maibara. Stop thinking and start looking. For something. In search of something, I tried pulling open the dresser drawers and opened the windows. I didn't uncover anything meaningful though. Rena, also unable to stand around doing nothing, was looking around the room like I was.
でもレナ、冷蔵庫や流しの下の棚とかを開いても、リカちゃんは見つからないと思うぞ。
隠れてるかなって思って。
Or maybe they hid a note or something, you know? As we were searching, it got noisy outside. Villagers were quickly assembling here, having heard the commotion. Of course, a lot of them were probably people Mion had called.
私、みんなに話をしてくる。遅かれ、警察も来るだろうしね。大石のやつにも事情を説明しなきゃ。
Mion began descending the stairs, and we followed her out to the front of the house. There were already around 10 adults here, and all of them looked uneasy. I suddenly noticed that the old people from the shrine were here as well, and they were praying for Rika-chan's safety, rubbing their prayer beads. This has gotten bad. This wasn't just a problem between friends anymore. The villagers all formed a ring around Mion, swarming her. Mion had raised her right hand as if silently telling them to calm down.
誰かの家にお邪魔していないか、町会の回覧区分に沿って全校をまず調べよう。本人たちがこっちの気も知らずに、誰かの家ですやすやとお泊まりしてる可能性もあるわけだからね。
It would definitely be hard for someone to wake Rika-chan up if she had eaten a good full meal and fallen asleep like a kitten afterwards. Oh, how nice it would be if that were the case.
こんなことは考えたくないけど、もちろん悪いことが起こった可能性もある。
Mion's face grew remarkably more grim, and a wave of silence washed over the adults.
我々も手分けしよう。昨夜の村長探しで回ったところをもう一度回る。
俺たちはダム現場をよく念入りに探してみる。お前さんたちは学校のあたりを探してみてくれ。
どうしたら早う回らんと。行こう行こ
みんな昨日も村長さん探しで徹夜だったからね。寝不足で辛いだろうけど、どうかよろしく。
With that as the signal, the adults scattered in every direction. I figured I should scatter somewhere as well, so I started walking unsteadily in a direction no one else had gone in. I was getting farther and farther away from people. I didn't feel scared or anything though. If someone were made to disappear, Shion and I should be first. It would have been perfectly normal for me to be scared of the dark. However, I didn't feel that way. Why was that? It was because tonight, someone had already disappeared. So, nobody else would disappear tonight. It would take some time before, exhausted as I was, would feel guilt at the cost of my own selfish sense of relief. Where is this story going, man? Suddenly, my vision cleared and a cold wind caressed my body. This was the hill from which you could see the whole village. Looking down from this hill, I could see lights on here and there and knew that the entire village had awoken from its slumber. First Takano-san and Tomitake-san, then the mayor, and now even Rika-chan and Satoko-chan had been sacrificed, and word of it was spreading everywhere. The strength in my knees left me. This could no longer be a joke. We could have found them. Mia would have told me I was a worrywart. Rena would just be glad we did, and they would have smiled at me. My hopes disappeared as if I were awakening from a dream. That was what the view I could see was telling me. Following my knees, my arms both bent forward and onto the ground, and I clawed at it with my nails. I couldn't figure out if I was feeling sorrow or frustration. I couldn't endure the burden of my own sin, and I had just told Rika-chan about it. They had nothing to do with it, but Rika-chan and even Satoko had been sacrificed. It was like a cross that Shion and I would have to each bear the weight of until we ourselves were erased. Well, if I'm going that far, then the problem started long before that. My original sin of breaking taboo and entering the ritual storehouse without asking. I knew I shouldn't have gone in there from the start, yet I lost out to cheap curiosity. I hadn't felt so angry at myself until this very moment. There was a crunching sound. I wasn't even interested in who made the noise, despondent as I was.
Keiichi-kun? Keiichi-kun? Daijoubu?
It was Rena. Perhaps my clawing at the ground made it look as though I was having stomach pains. She ran over and rubbed my back like she was trying to make me feel better.
Keiichi-kunが? 何も悪いわけはないよ。自分をどうか責めないでね。
I could tell Rena was doing her best to choose the right words out of consideration for me. That's why I could sense her intent behind those words. Keiichi-kun, you know why Rika-chan and Satoko-chan disappeared, don't you? Is what she really meant to say. Because it was an emergency, Rena had ignored the reason why I wanted to make sure Rika-chan was safe, but now that we had actually confirmed her disappearance, it was only natural Rena would start to wonder about why. However, with the situation having gone this far, I couldn't possibly tell her now. I didn't want to admit that Rika-chan and Satoko had disappeared, but I couldn't let Rena disappear either.
Keiichi-kun, こんな風通しのいいところにずっといたら風邪ひいちゃう。
A cold is the least of our problems, girl. Rena sat down, bringing her eyes level with mine.
子供たちはね、 もう解散して家で寝ろって。
Rena showed me her watch as she said that. It was long past 1 in the morning. Time was passing too quickly. Had I been crawling around here for that long?
もう寝ないと明日の学校に差し支えるよ。大人たちだって昨べも一晩中村長さんを探したからみんなクタクタ。今夜は少し早めに解散するって。
I was a little upset that they weren't allotting as much time to this as they had to search for the mayor last night, but that was something I, the cause of everything, had no right to criticize anyone for.
大丈夫。さっきね、警察の人も来たの。今、どんどん街から応援のパトカーが来てるよ。
Hearing that remark, I looked down at the village to see that there were indeed more cars than one would expect at this hour, coming from the darkness on the other side of the mountain. However, none of their emergency lights were on. Of course, their sirens weren't wailing either. That's right. All of the incidents that occurred right after Watanagashi were seen as the product of Oyashiro-sama's curse and would be handled in secrecy. Rika-chan and Satoko too. Their disappearance would end up exactly like the other serial incidents in the past. Surreptitious, unresolved, declared a mystery, and disappear from memory. Rika-chan's face, her sweet face, like a Western doll's, would fade away. But here's the thing that I don't understand, right? So someone dies every night of the Watanagashi festival, right? And the festival itself, it has this offering dance made by someone within the Furide lineage. So, and just humor me for a second, right? What if killing Rika-chan would end all of this? Or let's take it a step further and say that they remain, like, they will never be found again. What would happen the following year in the Watanagashi festival? Who would be making the offertory dance, so to speak? Satoko's smile, her energetic fanged smile, would fade away. The more I tried to remember them, the less I would be able to. I deserved to be called an idiot dozens of times over, and it wouldn't be enough. I couldn't hold back the tears at my own sheer stupidity.
圭一君が何を自分に責めているかわからないけれど、もうやめよう。
I wasn't about to deny it. I couldn't. Even so, I couldn't affirm it either. I wanted to at least keep Rena out of this. If she found out, she would become involved.
頼む、レナ、放っておいてくれないか。俺きっと家に帰ったって眠れない。
If I couldn't get to sleep, then I at least wanted to search for Rika-chan and Satoko until I collapsed. The entire village was looking, and yet they still hadn't been found. I don't think I would be able to find them if I went looking alone at this point. Still, I had to do it.
俺のせいで消えてしまったんだ。他の探してくれてる人たちよりも先になんか眠れるものか。
I had said that to myself in self-deprecation, but I soon realized that Rena was silently trying to find the meaning in my mumblings. I realized I had misspoke.
圭一君のせいなの？どうしてそう思うのかな？
That can't be. Keiichi-kun, you're not at fault. I was happy that Rena said these things to me, but she only did so because she didn't know the truth. If she knew that everything had been caused by my break-in taboo on the night of Watanagashi, then even Rena would curse my existence. However, I can't allow for even those curses. That would mean confessing my own crimes to Rena. If I spilled even one word of having snuck into the ritual storehouse on the night of Watanagashi, then even Rena could disappear tomorrow night. The gentle, spirited, always joking, always hoeing. But at a time like this, the most dependable person in the world, Rena, might disappear. I don't want that. Anything but that. This time, I need to bear my own cross. Alone.
圭一くんがとても仲間思いだって知ってるから、自分を傷つけたくなる気持ちもよくわかるよ。だけどレナは圭一くんのせいじゃないって知ってる。圭一くんが悪くないって知ってるから。
知ってるって。
The shivering in my veins rushed up my back and replaced the sorrow in my heart with fear. I didn't tell her anything, did I? Maybe I accidentally said something that caused Rena to figure it out? This is bad. Now Rena will disappear. Rena will disappear. Rena will disappear. Then Rena, the same way I always did, grabbed my head and began to pet it roughly.
圭一くん、ひょっとしてレナも消えちゃうかもしれないって思ってるのかな。お社様のたたりで。
She puts more force into the hand rubbing my head.
だったら安心して。
Why?
レナは消えたりしないよ。絶対に。
どうして消えないなんて自信を持って言えるんだよ。
I mean, someone's been sacrificed every night so far. There was no proof that it wouldn't happen again tomorrow night. There was even less proof, after all, that the sacrifice wouldn't be Rena. I don't care who you are. Just, please, if you're going to erase someone, erase me first. Please stop cruelly getting rid of people we're close to, like the mayor for Shion and Rika-chan and Satoko and for me. Shion's hysterical shouting came to mind. They must be planning to kill us last of all. They're not killing the first people who come to mind. They start by killing those we're close to, and then, after they caused us so much pain, they will kill us. That must be what they're doing.
Rena.
So why haven't they gone for your parents, man? Please don't disappear. Please don't. As long as I'm still here, I could no longer conceal the sobs welling up within me.
ほら、圭一くんに涙なんか似合わないよ。みんなのところに行こう。婦人会の人たちがね、お味噌汁の炊き出しをしてくれてるの。
It's 1 in the morning, mate.
飲むと温まって落ち着くよ。
Rena prompted me to stand. I didn't have the energy to oppose her, so I stood as she urged me to do. We returned to the shrine grounds to find several gas stoves there with miso soup in big pots. The many villagers there sipped at the soup they were given in dead stony silence. Their expressions were absolutely exhausted. Everyone had just been running around the village until a little while ago. From the dreary looks on their faces, though, I assumed they hadn't come up with anything just yet.
ケイちゃん、どこ行ってたんだよ。ケイちゃんまでいなくなったのかと心配したよ。
すまん。
Mion held up some miso soup for me, but I refused the offer. I didn't have much of an appetite.
みーちゃん、どう？何か手がかりはあった？
Mion took a sip of her soup, her expression frank.
全然ない。学校が終わってから家に帰って、二人で自転車に乗ってどこかに行ったらしい。しかも、二人が自転車に乗った姿は全く目撃されていないし。
When it gets dark in Hinamizawa, people quickly vanish from the streets. Aside from adults hurrying back home from town in cars or on bicycles, it was normal to see absolutely nobody walking around outside. It wasn't strange at all that nobody had seen Rika-chan or Satoko riding their bikes.
昨日の村長の時と同じ。お手上げだよ。
Mion's apathetic tone pricked my nerves, but that anger quickly subsided. She had been doing all sorts of things to try and find Rika-chan until just a second ago. If I asked her, she would probably say she was up all night last night too, looking for the mayor, wouldn't she? She must have been far more fatigued than I was. Besides, what about me? I had spent the time hunched over in indecision all alone. I had no right to say anything about Mion.
ケイちゃんも辛いだろうけど今夜はこれで休もう。さっき今夜は解散しようってなったところだよ。これを飲んだらもう終わりにしよう。
No.
終わり？ なのか？
もちろん終わりじゃないよ。明るくなったら警察も増援を入れて徹底的に探すってさ。沖宮の方に行ってる可能性もあるからね。村長の件も含めて獅子骨市全体で目撃情報がないか洗うって言ってる。それよりもケイちゃんだよ。どこに行ってたんだい？いつの間にかいなくなっちゃうから心配したんだよ。
Suddenly, I was on the receiving end, but I didn't have the willpower to
す
respond.
まん。気をつけるよ。
何もなかった？怪しい人に監視されてるとか付け狙われてるとかそういうのはなかった？
Interesting. Mion demanded with a serious expression. I was being criticized for how inconsiderate I had been, despite being in so much pain. I was frustrated that I was being criticized, but it was my sin. My sin, and I must bear it
何
alone.
もないよ。でも気をつける。すまん。
Mion, now aware that nothing had happened, heaved a big sigh with her shoulders, looking relieved.
おやおやおや、おいしい匂いが漂ってくると思ったら、これはぜひご商売に預かりたいですね。
Take mine. We heard the repulsive voice of a fat man. Whoa! It was Oishi-san, trailed by a handful of police officers. He was acting energetically, in a way unfitting given the situation.
大して残ってないですよ。それでもよければ勝手にどうぞ。
Mion didn't like Oishi-san very much. Her cold attitude, though, didn't seem to bother Oishi-san in the slightest. It was like splashing water in a frog's face.
ありゃりゃ。味噌汁のお残りってちょっと塩分高めなんですよね。参ったなあ。君たちはいただきます？
He recommended it to his subordinates, but everyone gave dry smiles and refused.
どうですか？警察の方では何か手がかりはつかめましたか？
Rena's smile was warm enough to replace the miso soup. Shut the fuck up, Keiichi.
大丈夫ですよ、お嬢さん。ご安心、ちゃんと探してるんですから。
He didn't say a word about having found any new clues. In other words, there had been zero progress. That sure was an annoying way of beating around the bush.
それよりも、もう本当に遅い時間です。どうぞ若い皆さんはお帰りになってお休みになってください。体に触りますよ。
そうだよ。ケイちゃんもレナも今日はもう休みな。あとは税金で働いてるおっさんたちがやってくれるから。
私たちだって税金払ってるんですけどね。蕎麦屋さんが自分の作った蕎麦食ってるみたいな気分ですよ。
I really wasn't in the mood for laughter. In fact, Oishi-san was the only one laughing like a fucking idiot.
じゃあ本当によろしくお願いしますね。帰ろう、ケイチくん。明日が辛くなるよ。
そうです、そうです。なんならお二人をお送りしてもいいですよ。
No, you go look for them.
熊ちゃん、車を回してあげてください。
あ、結構です。俺たち自転車で来てるんで。
ご安心を。私たちワゴン車で来てますから、自転車も積めますよ。
We may have gotten pretty sleepy, but we just needed to ride home at this point. I didn't want to bother the police like that. Rena, however, nodded.
せっかくだからお世話になろうよ。私たちだけで帰るよりきっと安全だよ。
When I thought about it carefully, I realized that Rena's idea was extremely rational.
そうと決まれば、行きましょう行きましょう。
じゃあね。おやすみ。レナもケイちゃんも。
みーちゃんも早めに休んでね。おやすみ。
I waved my hand as well, waving goodbye. Rika-chan and Satoko still hadn't been found. My unease, however, was steadily being pushed away by sleepiness. Rena showed the police where our bicycles were so that Oishi-san could haul them up into their truck. He prompted us to get into the back seat. I could hear the springs squeaking as I sat down onto a seat that would normally hurt my rear end, but at this point it was very soft and was more than comfortable enough for me to fall asleep on.
では、レディーファースト。お嬢さんの家から行きましょう。住所はどちらです？
ありがとうございます。私の家はですね、
I dozed off. Rena's voice slowly grew distant. I felt myself being sucked into the void of sleep.
もしもーし、前原さん。完全に眠っちゃってますか？
Huh? When I came to, it was quiet. The car was parked. Oishi-san was giving me light slaps to the cheek. What the fuck? It didn't feel good at all, so I woke up immediately.
すみません。すっかり寝込んじゃって。
Something was being held right up under my nose. A clump of metal? It was a can of coffee. I thought it was a gun.
ぬるいですがね。甘いカフェオレなら常温でも結構飲めますよ。
あ、どうも。
I mechanically took the can and opened the pull top. The feeling of warm, sweet liquid going down my throat awakened my sleepy mind. When my drowsiness receded, I started wanting to know why the car was stopped and why I was offered coffee. Oishi-san, who had been in the driver's seat, had at some point moved to the back. Suddenly, I have a very fucking bad feeling about this. It reminded me of the questioning yesterday at the library. It was already too late by the time I realized I had made a mistake. Today, of all days, it didn't look like I would be getting away. I had a feeling that until Oishi-san heard what he wanted to, he wouldn't be letting me go.
そんなに構えられても困ります。
Get me home, sir.
別に取って食おうってわけじゃないんですから。
Eat me? Interesting phrasing, bitch.
前原さん。
Oishi-san gulped down the last of his coffee and then stretched wide, showing me how relaxed he was. That, however, only served to heighten my nervousness.
俺に、また何の用ですか？
よう。いえいえ、別に。
You're going to evade the question at this point? What a deeply unreadable man.
私からは用はないんですが。
Anymore.
前原さんから私に用があるんじゃないかと思いましてね。
Like what?
別に、用なんかないです。
ありゃ。本当に？あるんじゃないですか？
There was only one side door in the back seat of this truck. In other words, my only exit was blocked off by Oishi-san. I couldn't get away. I could only limply hang my head and maintain my silence. Oishi-san, despite my reticence, relaxed and began smoking a cig. The cries of the insects outside seemed to be growing longer and longer, to an amount of time that seemed almost infinite.
前原さんから相談したいことがきっとあったと思ってたんですけどね。
Oishi-san exhaled a puff of smoke. The windows were open, but the tobacco smoke still accumulated inside the vehicle. How much did Oishi-san know more than you? What did he know, and what did he want to hear from me? If finding out the truth made you disappear, then if I told him, would Oishi-san disappear too? I had a feeling that I didn't need to worry about that in his case.
どうしてこんなことになっちゃったんでしょうね。
Oishi-san addressed me in a low tone as if he was talking to himself. How all this ended up happening? How the fuck should I know? That was what I wanted to know.
富武二郎さんと高野美代さん、ご存知ですよね。お祭りの時、園崎紫音さんを含めて4人で一緒におられたのを私がこの目で拝見してますから。その富武さんと高野さん、今どうしておられるかご存知ですか？ 実はお亡くなりになってましてね。気の毒な死に方でした。
Oishi-san probably played that card in order to surprise me. However, I already knew and didn't display the extreme reaction he expected.
おや、ひょっとしてご存知でした？
Unfortunately, for this question in particular, remaining silent was equivalent to saying yes.
じゃあ、こっちもご存知かな。富武さんと高野さんがたたりに遭われた理由の方です。なんでもですね、入っちゃいけない禁断の建物に入ったからだって言われてるんですよ。
The storehouse for ritual implements. That forbidden shed sealing away Hinamizawa's blood-stained past. Where the mistake that started it all happened.
村長さんや古出里香さんもそのせいでたたりに遭われたんだという噂はご存知で？
That would mean it was mine and Shion's fault. He was right. As soon as we revealed what we did.
西宮殿って言いましたっけ？あそこの鍵を簡易なものに付け替えたから賊に入られたんだっていうケチがついてるらしいんですよ。
What? This was news to me.
一昨年くらいまでは西宮殿にはでっかい缶抜きとでっかい錠前がいくつも付けられていたらしいんですよ。ところがほら、神主夫妻がお亡くなりになられて、今は古出里香さんが切り盛りされてるでしょ。缶抜きが重くて大変だから、もっと軽い簡単な錠前に付け替えてほしいと村長さんに相談したらしいんですよ。
I didn't know anything about those big bars he was talking about, but the lock certainly had been a simple one. It was a pretty cheap one too, and it didn't really fit my impression of what a lock for a place you would store something as important as ritual implements would look like, for fuck's sake!
リカさんはあの通り小柄な女の子ですからね。
Whack-ass sentences, bitch!
錆びついて重くなった缶抜きはしんどかったんでしょうな。で、村長さんが職人を手配して簡単な南京錠で鍵ができるように付け替えたんだそうです。
それがどうしてケチがつくことになるんですか？
つまりですね、前の厳重な錠前なら賊には忍び込まれなかった。村長さんとリカさんが勝手に安っぽい鍵に変えたから賊に破られたんだと、こういう話らしいんですよ。
そんな話？
そういう話がまかり通ってて、一部の村人たちが西宮殿に忍び込んだ賊と賊に破られるような鍵に変えた村長とリカさんを罰したんだ。
I'm sorry, what? Rika-san?
なんて話があったりなかったりしてるんですよ。相原さん、どう思います？
どう思うって、その一部の村人ってのもよくわからないし。
御三家ってご存知ですかな？渡長市のお祭りの開会式典で各家の代表がそれぞれ挨拶をなさってるでしょ。
I still wanna know why that last from the Kimiyoshi family called us.
見ていません。祭りには途中から来たから。
御三家ってのはHinamizawaの旧家の3つの家のことなんです。
Sonozaki, Kimiyoshi, and Furude.
具体的に言うと、Kimiyoshi家、園崎家、古出家の3つ。本当に古い家筋らしくてね、大昔から村の決め事は御三家が合議して決めるんだと言われてます。
Kimiyoshi family, old man Kimiyoshi, meaning the mayor's family. The Sonozaki family was Mion's. So the Furude family... Shut the fuck up!
園崎家が戦後に一気に勢力を拡大しましてね。
Are you really expecting the player to be this fucking dense, mate?
例のダム闘争で反ダムの旗頭になってからは事実上Hinamizawaを牛耳るトップに躍り出ました。でもですね、古いしきたりに従い今でも重要な村の方針は御三家で合議して決めているんだそうです。だから渡長市の開会挨拶もつまり村長と園崎家の現当主のおばあ様、そして古出家の最後の一人。
園崎家が大した家柄だという話は聞かされてたけど、リカちゃんの家もそういう旧家だったのか？
まあご存知の通り親族は全くおられませんから、古出家は事実上全く勢力を持ちませんがね。ただリカさん個人には求心力があるようで、 村のお年寄りには盲信する方が多いと聞いています。
It was certainly true that Rika-chan had an odd sort of charisma amongst the elderly.
で、その御三家ってのが何だって言うんですか？
Yeah, let's get down to the meat and potatoes of it all. Oishi-san paused for emphasis, lighting another cigarette.
ここまで説明してもまだ説明が足りませんかね。
わからないから聞いてるんです。
Oishi-san gave me a dry, meaningful grin and blew out another big puff of smoke.
御三家の人間が相次いで消されてるんです。どういうわけかね。
Where does Satoko come into all of this? Is it just by association to Rika?
Hinamizawaの内側の古い因習か何かに基づいているんじゃないかと読んでいるんですが。
そんなの俺にだってさっぱりです。
ですから君吉家古出家の当主が消えたんですから、次は園崎家の当主が消えるんじゃないかななんて思ったり思わなかったりしたりする今日この頃、いかがお過ごしでしょうか。な
Interesting.
なんちゃって。
園崎家の当主って誰だよ。
当主は園崎本家のおばあちゃんなんですが、実質上の当主権限はもう孫娘のミヨンさんに移行していると見て間違いないでしょうね。
The visage of Mion giving prompt directions to the adult while searching for Rika-chan sprung back to mind.
ミヨンが消える？
I hadn't even thought of that possibility. All my hair stood on end. That's insane.
嫌でしょう？
当たり前だ。そんなの許せるものか。
Clamp. Oishi-san grabbed my shoulders with both hands.
では協力を、前原さん。園崎ミヨンさんについて最近気づいたことを何でもいいから話してください。
I was going along with him. By the time I had realized it, it was too late. Oishi-san brought his face closer, almost close enough to ram into me, waiting for my next words. This pressure, I can't tear my eyes away from his... That moment, I heard a beeping sound. It was from the driver's seat. He ignored it at first, but then it started to bother him, so he finally let go of me and leaned into the driver's seat.
もしもし。はいはい、感度良子。
I was saved. Of course, it's not like I could escape through this opening.
そうです。はいはい。では戻りましょう。はいはい、はいはい。
Apparently he was being recalled. Now that I knew I would be freed, the tension in my body dissipated all at once.
そろそろ戻らないといけないみたいです。これからがいいところだったんですが、残念ですね。
Oishi-san flung open the door, exited, and walked around to the front of the driver's seat. He left the door open. Did that mean I could leave?
前原さんは友達思いの今時関心な若者です。友人のことを警察に喋ると、なんだか裏切っているような気持ちになるの。前原さん、一晩差し上げますから、ゆっくりお休みになってよく考えてくださいね。前原さんのほんのちょっとの勇気が、結局、大勢の友人を救うことにつながるかもしれないのです。
Did he want to say that the sacrifices wouldn't stop with Rika-chan and Satoko?
わかってると思いますが、綿流し以降、毎晩何かが起こります。これまでは、毎年1回だったたたりが、本当に景気のいい年です。
そんなの、景気がいいなんて言いません。
おととい、昨日、そして、明日の晩も、起こらないなんて保証。それを未然に防ぐのが私たちの仕事ですが、それには前原さんの協力が不可欠なんです。
I looked out at the open door to see none other than my own house right in front of me. It creeped me out that he knew my name and address, but I was too sleepy right now. I was too sleepy to care.
まあ、今日はもう眠いでしょう。もう3時になりますからね。
Jesus.
どうぞごゆっくりお休みになってください。
But it doesn't take like 2 hours to drive from the shrine to Rena's place. What were you doing?
はい。では、失礼します。
When I was about to get out of the truck, as if to deliver a parting blow, Oishi-san, in a raised voice,
私、前原さんが話す気になってくれるまで、毎日来ちゃいますからね。取り調べ室で自白を強要っての、もう時代じゃないと思いますんで。
I couldn't say anything in response, but me slamming the door shut probably served the same purpose. After lightly beeping the horn, "Hey, my parents are sleeping," Oishi-san's truck drove off. I went to the front door without waving goodbye. The door was locked, but the chain wasn't up. I unlocked the door and entered. Then walked over to the staircase. That was where I lost consciousness. Didn't even close the door. Okay, here we go. The Sonozaki family. The one to drastically expand its influence after the war was the Sonozaki family. The leader at the time was Oryu Sonozaki, who still has that seat today. Oryu Sonozaki has grown old, and today you can only catch a glimpse of who she was at the time. From what I've been told, however, she was a leader extolled as the best in history. Having become so old, aside from going out a few times a week for lessons, she spends her time at home in solitude, and seems to leave most of the ceremonial affairs to her heir, Mion. There are different views on why the successor was not her daughter, but her granddaughter Mion, but it's rumored that it has to do with disownment of her daughter and son-in-law. Like, who's constructing the... Was it this bad in chapter 1, or has the quality taken a fucking dip? Or is it just me? That uninhibited granddaughter, Mion Sonozaki, still shows no signs of the dignity required of the next leader. However, she does have Sonozaki blood in her veins and is permitted the name of demon. She still doubtlessly requires caution and is probably hiding her fangs and claws as skillfully as the leaders of the past did. Like, I'm getting annoyed at some of these sentences, man.
Hi. 郵便局員も目撃してないそうです。園崎本家は郵便受けにハンコが吊るしてあるそうで、書き留めも宅配便も勝手にハンコをして投函していいことになってるんだそうっす。
そりゃ不用心ですね。
綿流しの開会式でした挨拶が最後です。その後すぐに帰宅したらしいっすから。
恒例ですからね。話じゃ週に何回かお稽古事で外出してるそうじゃないですか。そっちはどうです？
毎週月曜に集会所で大正事を習ってるんですが、今週は休んだそうです。
大正事？
欠席の電話とかは？それを誰かが確認したとかは？
いえ、誰も。ただ、たまに休むことがあったらしいので。
明日さ、10時くらいになったら市役所のふりして電話してみましょうかね。在宅を確認してみてください。
10時ですね。了解っす。
Ever since it started to seem more and more like ancient Hinamizawa traditions had something to do with all of this, he had been keeping a careful eye on the three families. At this point, the leader of the Kimiyoshi family and the leader of the Furude family had disappeared. There was only one leader left. Oryo Tsunuzaki, the leader of the Sonozaki family. She was apparently a pretty old woman. Her dignity hasn't waned, but she still only appeared before people rarely, so it was difficult to confirm where she was at any given time. She, the last leader, hasn't been seen since the day of Watanagashi. Was she still alive and well within the Sonozaki main house? Or had she...
園崎美音が言うには、体調を崩して寝込んでるんだそうです。
本当に寝込んでるのかな。 顔と脈を見てみたいですね。
まったくっす。
The two of them breathed a big puff of cigarette smoke.
大石さん、園崎本家と古出神社の捜査令状、申請通ると思います？
Oishi didn't respond, exhaled another cloud of tobacco smoke, his surroundings now as foggy as his mind. The hidden demon. The inhabitants of Hinamizawa believe that the blood of demon flows in their blood. As such, the character for demon is treated as very sacred. For example, the usage of the character in names is apparently a right reserved for only the leaders of Kimiyoshi and Sonozaki families. Case in point, we can see it in the current Sonozaki family leader's name, Oryu, is written with the character... What? This, and only this, is proof that she is a legitimate leader of the Sonozaki family. In the same way, Mion Sonozaki, its successor, contains in her name, with Mi being written as... It also goes for Oryu's daughter and Mion's mother, Akane, who did not succeed her. It is known that before the disowning, Akane's name was actually written as... Though it was changed afterwards to still read Akane. Incidentally, it's thought that the first character, the Mayor Kichiru's name, originally meant demon, which can also be read as Ki. It should be said that names using the character aren't limited to successors of the Sonozaki family. We can even find it in the last names of the three families. For example, the characters for Kimiyoshi are likely split up version of... I don't see it. I kinda see it, but what about that little squiggly thing? If you write it in reverse and top to bottom as... It clearly resembles the character. As for the Furuta family, who had been in Shinto priesthood for generations, the word for fortune teller can be written without interval characters as... I think that with the addition of a demon's horn, the tick on top of the character, and it became that is used in the name now. In the case of Sonozaki family, where Sonozaki is written, I can't find any reference to the character, perhaps because it's already ingrained into their first names. There were the clan responsible for running Watanagashi ceremonies, so I think that instead, they included the contents of the ceremony into their last name. The Zaki in Sonozaki is a conjugation of the word for slice, and the Sono, written as, probably contains the hidden meaning of human body, as it is a complicated mess, organs, enclosed by four sides. I think in other words that Sonozaki comes from those who slice open the gut. What the fuck?!
あ、お疲れ様です。
どうです？何か手がかりはありました？
The officers shook their heads in disappointment. Exhaustion was plainly showing on everyone's faces. That was only natural. None of them had gotten a wink of sleep since the day of Watanagashi.
課長、若い子から交代で仮眠取らせてあげてください。ここからは長丁場になりますからね。無理せず、体を休めながらのんびり行きましょう。
みんなには交代で休めって言ってるんだけどね。お石さんからも言ってくれないか。
ありゃありゃ。みんな遠慮しないでいいんですよ。小宮山君、若い子から順に交代で休ませてあげてください。
小宮山さん、そうしてあげてください。
After the chief told him as well, Komiyama-san left his seat.
で課長、例の請求なんですけど。
第一、村人の噂だけなんでしょ。もっと具体的な証拠がなければ難しいよ。
その証拠があの中に詰まってるかもしれないんですよ。
その証拠が中に詰まっているという証拠が必要なんだよ。
課長、なぞなぞやってるんじゃないんですよ。死んだ2人を含む4人が渡流しの晩に西宮殿と呼ばれる禁断の蔵に無断で入り込み、それを何者かが見ていた。ここまでは信頼できる情報なんです。
情報と言ったってあくまでも噂だよ。証拠があるわけじゃない。
そりゃまあ、4人が放火無理して忍び込む写真はありませんがね。とにかく4人は西宮殿の中で何かを見たんです。消されるくらいの何かを。
消されるくらいの何か？それは何だい？
園崎家絡みの闇市場関係が有力候補ですな。拳銃とかご金製の品とか。園崎家の隠し資産ってのも捨てがたいあたりです。
大石さん、気持ちはわかるけど、あの西宮殿ってのは古出神社にある神聖な建物で、地元の人間への相当な配慮が必要な建物なんだよ。
I heard that there was an hour-long call made from Congressman Sonozaki to the big man. Chief, could he have nailed you back down?
とにかく、相当の証拠がない限り、西宮殿の捜査令状は取れないよ。園崎本家への令状も同じだ。特に園崎本家への捜査は、四課と県警の暴対が絡んでる。入念な事前調整がいるんだ。
調整がいるってんなら、私直接乗り込んでつけてきてもいいですよ。暴対は三海さん。隣の雀荘で話した方が早そうなメンツですね。
課長にお客様です。
Pushing the employee who guided them in right out of the way was an old man who looked like a Yakuza member, given his crested kimono and hakama. Could this be the guy that drove us home with Shion or Mion? I don't remember. Did he not get enough of this over the phone?
わしは議員の園崎じゃ。責任者を出さんか。はよせい。
どうも。私が課長の高杉でござ。
お前の名刺なぞいらんわ。それにお前だけでは足らん。大石とかいう男も呼ばんか。神聖な古出神社に捜査令状なんぞを請求しよった罰当たり者じゃ。
申し訳ございません。大石はただいま捜査に出ておりまして、なかなか連絡がつきにくく、私が代わって受けたまわりますので、どうぞおかけください。
The chief's eyes were telling me to get the fuck out of there. Perhaps I'll gratefully accept this favor. Maybe I go lay down in the nap room.
よいか。古手神社はそもそも公暦2600年に次ぐ2500年の歴史を有する八百万の神々とお社様と先祖の霊を祭り、日が昇りてから沈むまで、月が昇りてから沈むまで、それを土足で踏みにじろうというバカがいる。そもそも信仰の自由は憲法で定められた国民の最も尊い権利であろうが、こんなものは断じて許せんぞ。聞いておるのか、大田家が。わしを怒らせてただで済むと思わん方がいいぞ。
This guy Karen's? And with that, we are indeed going to call it an episode. Next episode, we're gonna get deeper into this. The next morning, I wonder, did we collapse out of exhaustion or did we collapse because of the scene of our room? If there is any ties to chapter 1 at all, we'll see. Until next episode, this has been your boy Karagol Gaming. I'm out of here. Love y'all and deuces.